Okay, y'all. It looks like I'm live again. And so I hope that y'all will jump back on. Um, my internet was going in and out as it happens in the mountains. And so I have to do that video all the way over again. I ain't tripping. You know, I got my little beer. I'm ready to go. So, you know, I give people a couple minutes to get on. I'm so sorry about that though, y'all. I totally started that video and it was just going in and out, and I thought it was me, but when I looked at the playback, it was cutting up and all kinds of stuff. Y'all don't know what the hell I was saying, so I said I'm going ahead and start back over. But what we're gonna talk about today, y'all, I gotta talk about Self-Made. Not the plot or anything like that. I'm not concerned about, you know, spoiling it for people. I just want to set a couple of things straight in terms of facts, because this movie totally lacked a lot of them. And at first I was going to let it go because I was okay with, you know, them saying it was inspired. I was okay with that because that, you know, indicates that there's going to be it's mostly fiction. And so I was okay with that. They were basically putting together a fairy tale about Madam C.J. Walker, which I was okay with that. You know, people do it in historical fiction all the time. But what's bothering me about the situation is that we don't teach history enough in our schools. We just don't. Black history is not an elective. It's not a required class. Black literature is not an elective or a required class in our secondary schools. Most of y'all know I'm an administrator in a school district, and I make the decisions about curriculum. I make the decisions about assessments. Like, I can tell you that a lot of the school districts that I work in, we don't make this a priority that Black history is taught or Black literature. And honestly, I'm getting ready to start lobbying for that, because this is why. It's okay for people to make fictional historical portrayals about our histories and things like that, but when this is the only entry point that we have, like, we have to make sure that we set the record straight on, you know, history and what was real and what wasn't. And at the end of the day, I just cannot sit back. They done took my boy Booker T. Washington out, and I just cannot stand for that. Y'all already know how I feel about that man. I'm not about to let y'all take that man out like this. So we about to set some things straight. I want to start with Booker T. Washington and his portrayal in the movie. Now, he was living in the late 1800s. He was, first of all, born at the end of slavery and was a grown man towards the end of the 1800s and the beginning, the first 15 years of the 1900s. Okay, like, y'all, Booker T. Washington flat out was the biggest philanthropist that our race has seen. Okay, he believed, and you can read this in his Atlanta exposition speech. W.B. Du Bois termed it the Atlanta Compromise because he asked Black people to compromise their, you know, fighting for freedom just to be able to live in peace with white people. He did say that. However, also in that video, also in that speech, and you can see him saying that speech actually on Wikipedia, and there's a couple other places that Henry Louis Gates have him, so you can hear his voice saying the speech. He said, cast your buckets where you are. He was really trying to get Black people to understand that we need to stay in the South. This is where we're from, and this is where we're going to be able to get the most wealth. He believed, one, that all African Americans deserved an education and needed to fight for that education. And two, that on top of getting your education, you need to also get a trade so you can build wealth. Okay? People are mischaracterizing this man left and right in terms of what he was about. I done seen people calling him an Uncle Tom. Probably don't even know what an Uncle Tom is. If you haven't read Uncle Tom's Cabin, you can't call nobody an Uncle Tom because you don't even know who the original Uncle Tom was. You can't even talk. I ain't even gonna get on that. My whole thing here is that that Booker T. Washington was a man of his people, believed in his people, fought for his people, and he got money for his people. Okay? All of the biggest white philanthropists, Black philanthropists, men and women, were all in that man's pocket. Okay, making sure that they funded Tuskegee, making sure that they funded any other HBCU that he helped open, which was several. He also was able to get money for Mary McLeod Bethune School in Daytona that is now known as Bethune-Cookman, and he was able to open a lot of primary schools in the South for African American children. He was able to fund all of that. And people don't know that about him because they try to make it seem like this man only didn't want people to go to college. He built a college and he taught these kids to build the college through their hands. He believed in what Frederick Douglass put out towards the end of his life, that black people need to fight for wealth and they need to fight for education. And the way that you fight for wealth is by getting you a trade. That is all he was trying to say. And I'm hearing people just mischaracterize this man all the way across damn America today. I just couldn't even concentrate on work today because people just lying on the homie Booker T. Washington. Now, here's the other thing. To say that he was a perfect historical figure would be a lie, as it would be a lie with anybody else, y'all. We like to try to make our heroes one-dimensional, where we only remember them for the great things that they did and not remember that those were humans just like you are human. So just like you mess up, they mess up. When they make missteps, we make missteps the same exact way. Why we don't give that same, understanding to our heroes, I will never understand that. But that's basically what happens with Booker T. Washington. He's either put in a, coon basket or he's put into a liberator basket. And depending on how much you read about him, that's where you make your decision. It's time out for that. So let's talk about what actually happened in the movie. They made it seem like he was extremely patriarchal, where Addie, her character was Addie in the movie. Addie was treated as a female plaything to sell some raffle tickets for him. And that she was dismissed as a businesswoman, and that he tried to dismiss C.J. Walker, but she stepped up to him. That, I don't know if it's true or not. I haven't seen any paperwork. I have not seen anything. And y'all, I have an extensive, he wrote 14 books. And there have been countless articles and everything that you can find at Fisk, special collections. There's so much stuff about him because his wife went to Fisk. One of his wives went to Fisk. So at the end of the day, they have a lot of stuff on Booker T. Washington at Fisk. Go spend some time at the library once Corona is done doing what it's doing. But anyway, I digress. So I say that to say that Booker T. Washington was married 3 times. 2 of his wives died after giving birth to his children. And then the 3rd wife he was married to the end of his life. And all 3 of them helped him get Tuskegee and all the rest of these schools off the ground. His 2 other wives served as, faculty members and teachers at Tuskegee. His last wife was able to help him open so many elementary schools in the South and just did so much philanthropic work. And what people don't know about Booker T. Washington is, even though he was trying to tell black people, chill on pushing these white people for rights right now. Let's get ourselves together before we push them for rights. Let's get some segregation right now and get our stuff together before we actually start asking white people to integrate and give us some, which I think was actually the right thing to do, but I digress. He used to secretly fund, before there was an NAACP, because remember the NAACP didn't come until 1909, y'all. Okay, so he used to fund, like if there was litigation for Plessy versus Ferguson, if there was anything that was coming with separate but equal, he funded litigation for all of that stuff. Booker T. Washington secretly funded all of that stuff, and people don't know that about him, and that's because we don't teach it in our schools, and that's a problem for me. Okay, now let's talk about W.E.B. Du Bois real fast, because I don't really have a lot to say about him. Same thing, people try to paint him out to be good or bad. There is no good or bad. He's a human, and so he made the choices he made, and some were good and some were fucked up. I mean, let's keep it 1,000. So at the end of the day, y'all, W.E.B. Du Bois at first agreed with the Atlanta Exposition speech, but then he later called it the Atlanta Compromise, and that's why he came up with he first started pushing back against it in 1903 in the Souls of Black Folks. Check it out. But then he put the NAACP together to literally go against what Booker T. Washington was preaching about at the time. Now, let me tell y'all something about W.E.B. Du Bois. They painted him in this movie to not be as patriarchal. They kind of tried to juxtapose Booker T. Washington as this really patriarchal black, man that was against women, and juxtaposed him against W.E.B. Du Bois, who was made out to look like he just really was, you know what I'm saying, like in love with what C.J. Walker was trying to do and respected her and all that. Y'all, W.E.B. Du Bois was actually trash as a person. And I hate to say it like that, but he was. Let's run it down. Number one, Ida B. Wells. Some of y'all may know Ida B. Wells as the person who wrote The Red Record. And The Red Record was the very first book that was ever written and as a full report about why black men were being lynched. And she found that many black men were being lynched because of the jealousy that happens because of African American men, because they were business owners and threatening their businesses, and they, she wrote all of that up to show and gave like really explicit examples as to how African American men were being lynched simply because of jealousy. Well, W.E.B. Du Bois took that lynching platform, because it blew up in 1919. He took that lynching platform from her, boxed her out of it, and was just like, okay, girl, bye. That's what he did to Ida B. Wells. She hated him. She hated W.E.B. Du Bois because he used to play her like a chump, like she was a peon. Y'all can read it anywhere. It is not a hidden fact if you do history, honey. It's not a hidden fact. And so he treated Ida B. Wells like trash. And then on top of that, what people don't know is Marcus Garvey was a student of Booker T. Washington. He didn't go to Tuskegee, but he wrote out to him a lot of times to say, I want to open some schools like what you doing in Jamaica. Can you put me on? Can you teach me what I need to do? And so Booker T. Washington kind of gave him some tips. Hey, start here, do this, try to think about that, blah, blah. And so Marcus Garvey was very, very, very loyal to Booker T. Washington behind that. So when Booker T. Washington died, when W.E.B. Du Bois started throwing salt on his name, Marcus Garvey wasn't going for it. And so he let that man have it. And y'all, believe it or not, I can, if you are interested in it, you inbox me, message me, I will send it to you. They have beef in poetry where they are literally like in a rap battle against each other in poetry, talking about each other. But W.E.B. Du Bois was doing that colorism stuff where he was calling Marcus Garvey apes and underqualified and uneducated just because he was dark skinned. And he made it very, very well known that that's how he felt. So let me tell y'all something that y'all probably really don't know. Y'all done heard of COINTELPRO, correct? By J. Edgar Hoover. Okay, guess who the first black leader that J. Edgar Hoover ever took down for the FBI? Marcus Garvey, honey, in 1922 or 20, I can't remember. Yes, J. Edgar Hoover's very first black leader that he took down was Marcus Garvey. And the same way that he took out the Black Panther Party, the same way that he took out Martin Luther King, same way that he took out Malcolm X, the same way that he took out Fred Hampton, the same way that he tried to take out Stokely Carmichael, the same way that he came for all of our leaders, he started that shit with Marcus Garvey in the 1920s. Check the facts, okay? The first person to ever go down from the FBI as a black man was Marcus Garvey. And guess who helped him? Baby, W.E.B. Du Bois. W.E.B. Du Bois was giving them informants. W.E.B. Du Bois was like throwing shade and salt on his name because Marcus Garvey was pulling like 25,000 people to conventions. Okay? Pulling people to conventions. Damn, it's right, Marcus. I'm trying to tell you. Now listen. He was pulling like 25,000 people to a convention. He had a convention. People don't know this. Marcus Garvey had a convention at Madison Square Garden. They had 30,000 African Americans in that motherfucker. For real. Madison Square Garden in 1919, baby. Marcus Garvey wasn't to be played with. On top of that, Marcus Garvey had his newspaper going out to every African American, well, I can't say that, African diaspora country that he knew African Americans were landing at. Y'all, he had them motherfuckers translated into Spanish, into French, and to English, and was getting it to everybody in the African diaspora. That man was not playing about how he wanted to bring the people together. He wasn't playing. So they had to take him out. W.E.B. Du Bois took him out because he helped them. Those people be able to, set that man up and find out all his personal information. He took Marcus Garvey down. End of the 20s, around 1930s, that's when W.B. Du Bois started shifting, understanding that integration wasn't the answer, that segregation was the answer, that Booker T. Washington was right the whole time. I can give you all of that in literature. I have all of those pieces sitting on my bookshelf right now, and I can send it to you if you're interested. But yes, all of that happened, y'all. It is for real. And so for them to sit up here and play Booker T. Washington and juxtapose him with W.E.B. Du Bois as if it's a good thing and a bad thing, a good man and a bad man, it's just whack to me. Because they had their good parts and they had their bad parts. They were phenomenal leaders for our people. We got a lot of our philosophy from these men. And at the end of the day, they need to be heralded. But because we don't teach them, jealousy is a motherfucker, baby. Because he was straight up jealous of Marcus Garvey, for real. But let me tell you something. We have to push for this type of history and this type of understanding to be taught to our people, because that's why we don't know it, because they didn't put it in our classrooms at the time. It wasn't that important for us to know. Wouldn't it have been great as a black person, you could see the philosophies that were building among those people, so you can choose what you want to follow and what you might not want to follow? What's good, a good decision, what's a bad decision? I think it's called critical thinking, honey. It's called critical thinking. Okay, I'm reading what you said, Keisha. I had heard some of this before, but definitely giving me details and more. Yes, no problem, sis. Now, let me tell y'all a couple of things. Let me bring this all to full circle. I'm excited about this. Now, I spent a lot about the men. Let's talk about the women. Madam C.J. Walker, this was fictional. But what really bothered me was the depiction of Addie Monroe, which was actually the person Annie Monroe, who was the teacher. Oh, sign up for my class, somebody. I got you, sis. And actually pick up my book, Aphrodisiacs, on Amazon and Books A Million, because I wrote about all of this stuff. Madam C.J. Walker, all this stuff. I wrote about all of that in my book, believe it or not. But let me tell y'all something. Okay. I didn't like the characterization of Addie Monroe, who was really Annie Monroe. Annie Monroe did actually serve as a mentor to Madam C.J. Walker. Now, in Self-Made, they tried to make it seem like Addie didn't think that she was, yes, Turnbow. They didn't think that her name is Annie Turnbow Malone. They didn't think that, they made it seem like in the movie, that Turnbow didn't think, Annie Turnbow Malone didn't think Madam C.J. Walker, known as Sarah Breedlove at the time, was good enough or pretty enough to sell those materials for her. That is a lie. She was absolutely a seller, her top seller, and so she was employed by her. That whole bull about colorism between the two of them, that was kind of orchestrated. Not fully orchestrated, but kind of. She definitely was a seller for her. And the reason they fell out, and actually I don't know how much they didn't depict this in the story, but Madam C.J. Walker actually lived in Denver and started her company here for a very long time. And actually married her husband, C.J. Walker, here in Denver. So, and And he was a huge marketing guy. They made him look like a goofball and, you know, like he didn't know what he was doing. But supposedly he was really, really good and cold in the game. So, but I digress. Anyway, it's also not accurate that she stole the whole thing. I guess you could say she stole it, but like it was commonly done back in the day that black women would use petroleum and castor oil to straighten their hair and all that other kind of stuff. So Annie Malone actually like did an original batch of that. But what they fell out about was Madam C.J. Walker wanted to improve it by bringing, you know, smells. And then she wanted to expand the line by giving shampoos and conditioners and all that other kind of stuff. And so that's why they actually fell out. It wasn't about her not getting a chance to sell the stuff from her. That's absolutely not true. And on top of that, she never stole the products from the lady and then sold it and proved herself and was still denied. That did not happen. That was totally embellished. But the other thing I want to point out about that too is that Annie Malone was not the first millionaire, but she also started coming up, you know what I'm saying, around the same time that C.J. Walker did. She did it first, but C.J. Walker did it more broadly and more nationally before Annie did. And so Annie also lost a lot of her fortune because she had a husband that she divorced who took almost all of her stuff. So at the end of the day, Annie Malone still did a lot of great stuff for the black community. She paid for HBCUs. She paid organizations and supported them. She had college, or a couple, maybe two. I think she had 2 colleges where women were able to learn how to be beauticians and all that kind of stuff, being self-made entrepreneurs. She did a lot of the same stuff with the same methods that C.J. Walker did. C.J. Walker just beat her to it. And it was because C.J. Walker's husband was a marketing executive. So, of course, your husband's supposed to be able to help you when he could do that. But let me tell you something that is true, and then I'm going to wrap this up with this, y'all. Freeman Ransom, who was her lawyer, that is very true. Both she and her daughter died very young of hypertension. Her daughter, Alelia Walker, was the talk of Harlem, okay? They didn't do her any justice in this movie. I would have to do a whole nother video to talk about Alelia Walker, but look her up, honey. Her friends was Langston Hughes and Conti Cullen and, you know, all of these amazing Harlem Renaissance writers. Alelia Walker was the shit. But at the end of the day, Freeman Ransom was true. And when both of them died, he took over the company, okay? Now, I don't know how many of y'all remember the Black Panther Vanguard. Y'all remember that? It was on PBS. It was a whole documentary. The Black Panther Vanguard. Stanley Nelson, was the writer of that. He also wrote We Are Rising, which was the documentary on HBCUs that was on PBS last year. And I got the opportunity to actually interview Stanley Nelson and find out a lot of information about him and just ask him all those questions. So let me tell y'all something about Stanley Nelson. Freeman Ransom, who was the lawyer in Self-Made, was Stanley Nelson's grandfather. People do not know that. And so the very first documentary that Stanley Nelson ever did was about Madam C.J. Walker. Why? Because his grandfather was the president of the company when she died. And then his mother took over when he died. And so Stanley Nelson was able to get all of this first-hand information and do his first documentary, which was in 1988. It's called $2 and a Dream. And it's the true story about Madam C.J. Walker. He has done documentaries on Emmett Till. I can't remember what the name of that is, but you can find that pretty readily on YouTube. Also, Marcus Garvey. He did a documentary on Marcus Garvey. Y'all, phenomenal. It's on YouTube. I'm going to ask that you guys reach out on YouTube to Stanley Nelson's page and really look at his documentaries and really learn what happened with our people, y'all. It is time that we start educating ourselves because we know our schools didn't do us that justice. And as a person on the front lines, I promise you I'm going to be fighting to make sure that Black history is taught as a, I would love for it to be a, required course. But even if we can get it as an elective course, that's taking a step forward, baby, because ain't nobody offering it. And this is why we got to offer it, because if we don't teach our own history to our people, then they're going to make these fictional stories, and we're not going to know the truth, and we not going to know what's fiction. And that's what we really need to focus on, and that's pretty much what my point is today. So I really appreciate y'all tuning in and answering all these questions. If y'all have any questions, or if y'all want to see any of these pieces, or y'all want some ideas on things that you can read to learn more about this, please let me know. Y'all know I'm open for that, and I will give you whatever information you want. But let's just start really knowing the truth about our people, y'all. And not in a way to judge who's better and who's not, but for us to really glean from them what we need to do in this crazy world we living in today. We have to learn from the history, y'all. And the history, the answers are right there. And because we don't know the history, that's why they keep it from us, because they know the answers are right there. And if we were liberated, then we would totally be able to take what our ancestors have put down for us and really turn this motherfucker around. But because they hide it from us, we don't know. And so I'm going to get back on here sometime this week to talk a little bit more about a third party. I've been talking to y'all about my feelings about a third party, and I really want to talk more about that with y'all. But I'll try to do it sometime, like maybe Thursday or Friday. Give me a couple of days. So love y'all. Thank y'all so much for tuning in. Let me know if it's anything that you want to read or anything that I could suggest to you. Peace out.